Good morning. On this segment of Fostering the Future, I'm going to show you some literacy things you can do to add to your reading time to help you and your students that you're working with at home now. And parents, you've been doing a great job of what you've been doing as far as story time, and listening to the readers online is a great way to make sure the students are listening to great reading, making sure they are paying attention to punctuation and expression and fluency. But there are some things you can do at home to help kind of reinforce some of those skills that your daycare centers, your pre-K teachers, as well as your kindergarten teachers are doing at school or have been doing at school. So one thing is just to introduce the book. And the book I'm using today is Dr. Seuss's One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. And one of the things we talk about in our younger grades is making sure we have the book turned the right way, making sure the kids recognize that this is upside down, that this is the back of the book, that we're going to be looking at the front of the book, and then we'll be opening up the cover. So introducing the cover of the book, the front cover of the book, as well as the back cover of the book, introducing the author, and then the title of the book. Okay? And then as you go in, making sure you're looking at the title page as well, because it's going to list all of that. And a lot of times it will also list the illustrator. So getting the students to understand who the author is, the person who writes the book, and then the illustrator as well. And as you go through, you can have the students to recognize, the younger ones to recognize the letters. We know that letter recognition is very important in early literacy, making sure they recognize both the uppercase letter and lowercase letters, and they can start matching those things there. Identifying words they know. If they've been working on their number words, they should be able to recognize that this is 1 and this is 2, as well as their cover words, red and blue. And as you proceed through the book, you can stop and ask questions about what do you think will happen next, especially if it's a book that you are reading for the first time with your students. So as we look, you can get them to start looking at the images, especially when it's a first time reading a book, and get them to start making some predictions or guesses about what's going to happen in the story. Once you have a student who's read a book for a while, they'll start reading it to you or with you. And that's what we encourage. And then have that transition from you reading it to them reading it to you. So this book, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. Black fish, blue fish, old fish, new fish. This one has a little star. This one has a little car. Say, what a lot of fish there are. So you want to make sure that when you're reading the books, you are showing expression, you're giving them a chance to read with you. Sometimes we call it as lap time. Sometimes they want to sit up in your lap so they can read to you. That way they can sit right there with you, and then you can read it together. If you are working with 2 or more, of course that's not going to be enough lap room, but they can definitely gather around you, or they can sit right in front of you, or you can all sit on the floor together if that's not an inconvenience for you. Again, these are going to give you a lot of skills. Like this book, skipping ahead here, some are sad, some are glad. Give you a chance to look at rhyming words too. So there are a lot of skills that you can pull out of these books, especially if you have a book like one of your Dr. Seuss books or any books. And if you don't have a lot of children's books at home, that's okay. You can actually spend time, you and your students, writing some books that you would like to use and go over some of these skills as well. Making a picture or picture book where you just draw pictures and they tell you a story about what those pictures mean to them. Or if you're writing it together, or if you have some older students who are good at writing poetry, maybe the older student can write and be the author of the book, while your younger students can be the illustrator and draw the pictures for it. So it's all about being creative. It's what we're going to keep going back to. It's about being creative, especially when you have multiple layers of levels of children in your home. Get them to work together, especially if you have something that you need to do for your job, getting them to work together or taking turns while one is working on one aspect of the book, the other can be working on another component. Okay? Now, going back to some of the skills we work on, we want to make sure that our students know that we read from left to right and then we go down the page. Some things that we do in the classroom is called tracking. It's when you take one finger and hold it at the top of the line and you use the other finger to track across the page. Then you move that finger down and you move across the page here as well to make sure that you're not losing your spot. And it's kind of hard to demonstrate upside down. Sorry about that. But that's called tracking to help you keep pace with where you're reading. And students, when they're first learning to read, it's going to take them a while because they are now taking those sounds that they have learned in isolation and blending them together. Say, for instance, this one. You may have a child who says at. Well, you want them to stretch it out at first. At. But then you want them to close it up and put it back together. At. Fat. At. Fat. Okay? And sometimes this is illustrated using a slinky where they stretch it out and put it back together again. But however you need to do it at home, where they spread it out, each letter, and then bring it back together, it's still going to get those sounds. And there are many teachers who do it different ways. These are things I did in my classroom when I was working with kindergarten students. And then even when I had second grade students or sometimes third grade students who struggled with reading, we would just break it down to sound by sound and then put it together. There are also some students who may struggle with some of your blends. Going back here to this page with your BL, the blah, blah. So just make sure you are over exaggerating that if you have students who struggle with that, and then that'll help them understand it. Another thing that you can do is when you get to your different punctuations, like your exclamation point versus your periods, make sure you're actually emphasizing those, and it's going to be a little over exaggerated, but you want them to know that it's an exclamation. We are excited or we're showing some type of emotion about it, whereas when we're reading with our periods, our voice is going to go down to let us know that's the end of the sentence. And we want to make sure they're pausing briefly at the end of that statement so that they're not running over it, and so they can understand the meaning behind the message that the author is getting out. Okay? So like I said, I'm not reading the whole book this time. I'm just using this as an example. If you have any questions about some strategies that you can use to help during this time, feel free to either reach out to your teachers or feel free to contact me. I'm Dr. Foster. My email address is teacherfoster@gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook. I'm there. I'm on Twitter. I'm on all your social media platforms. And I'm glad to do my part as far as fostering the future. Have a great day and see you next time. Stay safe. Bye-bye.